Now, hi, I'm Margaret Hask. I'm director of the Cornwall Library, and welcome to Risk Forward with Victoria Labalme. A few notes: this program will be recorded, and everyone will be muted throughout the program. We will have questions and answers towards the end of the hour, and we ask that you please use the chat feature for that. We'll be monitoring the chat. So, Jillian Blake is our interviewer this evening. She'll be interviewing Victoria. Jillian is a senior vice president, publisher, and editor-in-chief at Crown, a division of Penguin Random House. She's edited many bestsellers, including Elizabeth Kolbert's prize-winning The Sixth Extinction, Rachel Maddow's Blowout, and Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. She lives in New York City and Cornwall, and she is on the board of the Cornwall Library. So Jillian, Victoria, are you ready to go?
We are ready to go.
We're ready to go.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Margaret. So last time I did this, I was interviewing Elizabeth Kolbert, who I'd worked with for many years. I do not actually edit Victoria, but I'm so excited to get to know her and to have read her book and to be introducing her today. So Risk Forward just came out and it hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list in its first week, which I know from being in the business is awesome. And now that I have read it, I will say it is not your typical book. It's sort of more of like an interactive experience that aims to help you find your way forward in life. It's certainly, I found a lot of inspiration in it. Victoria has a background in the arts, writing, performing, directing, producing, including appearances at Caroline's on Broadway, which I'd love to see, Victoria, your one-woman show at some point. I bet it's amazing. She's also been on major network channels and HBO. There's a great scene in the book about a audition for Sex and the City, which we'll get to later. And she has taken this background in the arts to create two programs, one called Risk Forward and the other called Rock the Room. And in both, she applies the principles from the arts to help people discover and express their hidden genius in communications and work and life. She's also a consultant to CEOs and top teams at companies like Starbucks, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, PayPal, as well as cultural and educational institutions. I'm gonna keep going because she's got a lot. There's a lot to say about her. She's also a member of the Speaker Hall of Fame, which I didn't know existed, but I think is very cool. And she is a keynote speaker on some of the biggest stages around the world. Why is she here? Why do we get her? It's because for many years, Victoria's family had a home in Connecticut, specifically in West Cornwall. And she was a cub reporter years ago for the Lakeville Journal. And I also just learned that she was at one time a waitress at Woodlands. We are thrilled to have you here today, Victoria, and we have a very cool sizzle reel so you can see her on these big stages before you, get introduced to her here on this screen.
All right.
Now I'd like to introduce our presenter.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Please welcome Victoria.
Victoria Labalme.
Thank you so much. We're going to have fun. Whatever your business is, how do you turn that into art?
How cool is that? Don't you all want to go see this? I want to see you perform. But I think it's really interesting the way you are kind of connecting your background in the arts with this kind of motivational speaking, if that's okay to call it that, and really helping people think about their lives and what makes them happy. So I would like to start with a quote from a recent article about the book in Forbes.com, and it says risk forward is a mosaic that will change the way you view your life forever. So that's a major claim. As I said in the intro, the book, is a little bit more of an experience than a traditional book. Victoria, will you talk more about that, the format and the layout of the book?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to start by saying thank you to Margaret. Thank you to Shari Goodfriend. Thank you to you, Jillian. Thanks to all of you for showing up on a Saturday in the summer. It's very sweet, and I feel very welcome here with the home team of Cornwall. And the book is really, as you said, Jillian, it's an experience. I grew up going to the library in Cornwall, and with my sisters and my brother taking books out. There was one particular book that had a big influence on Risk Forward. And that is a book which I will show you here called Arm in Arm. This is my version of it. I don't know if it still exists at the library, but this is a children's book and every page is different. Each page is an experience unto itself. I'll flip through it. Sometimes the text goes sideways. You can't really see the text, but you can see some pages have full color. Some have a lot of words, some have no words. And I always found that so intriguing. And so Risk Forward is modeled to some degree on that. I said, how can I create a book that is a little bit like a performance that takes the audience, in this case, the reader, through a journey that each page will surprise the eye? It's something I teach when I teach presentation skills. I say every slide should surprise the eye. And so if you have a graph, the next slide is a picture, maybe it's followed by just a single digit number, followed by a video. And so this book, Risk Forward, has that feeling. And it's in a way a mosaic. Some pages are diagrams, some are text, some are puzzles almost. And I wanted it to be fun and an experience. So that is the idea behind it. You can jump around and read the book in any order and enjoy it for the way it is for you. Everyone goes through it differently.
I love that about this book you found in the Cornwall Library, which is a kid's book, right? But this is very much a book for adults. But I did find as I was reading it, it has these sort of natural pauses, and that the adorable little figure that runs throughout, just you kind of connect with, and as almost as a character in the book.
Right.
So what made you write this book now, and not just in this format, but the contents, the sort of the ideas in the book? What led you to decide to write it at this
Yeah,
point?
absolutely. Well, I had been traveling around the world, as you saw in the video, working with executives, sometimes entrepreneurs, scientists, students, occasionally non-for-profits. And I often would sit in the audience and I'd watch these leaders talk about goal setting and clarity and decisiveness. And there was this theme that is the only way to succeed. And while there's huge merit to goal setting and clarity and decisiveness, no question, in the business market and in the arts market, I also knew from my own experience and from having hung out with these CEOs and like the cocktails at the bar, that a lot of them didn't always know where they were going and often had found their success through this in-between period. How we handle the moment between clarity is everything. Those 2 points of clarity. And in that moment, whether you're just graduating from college or you've retired or you're in a health crisis or you're facing a new blog post or a blank screen, how you decide in those moments and which path you move forward on is everything to your success. And the pressure to have goals and clarity, I think sometimes eclipses our natural talents and our natural path. And so I wanted to address that, because for me, having grown up as the youngest of four, I always felt like I was less than because I wasn't clear. And my older siblings, some of whom are here, were like, always telling me what they thought I should do. And as I got older, everyone was telling me, and I thought, I lost my way at times. Coming out of high school, all my friends knew where they were going to college. I was not sure. I came out of college, everyone knew what their career path was. I wasn't sure. And people gave me a really hard time. They gave me a hard time for not being clear. They gave me a hard time for not being married. They gave me a hard time for not having kids. And I said, this needs to be addressed because I'm not the only one that's been given a hard time in life. And I think all these people who choose their own path forward need to have a voice. And that's what this book is for, to help other people, ourselves, find our way forward if our path isn't always the traditional one?
Well, I'm going to skip ahead. I was going to ask this question later, but I want to ask it right now, because when you say that, I think so many of us are in that in-between period because of the pandemic. It has upended so much of many people's lives. It has led them to really reflect on what's important, and also has brought in a lot of uncertainty. If this could happen, what else could happen? So how do you feel like the book really, I think I read that you started it well before. Yes, you started it well before the pandemic hit, but it feels like sort of like perfectly timed for this moment.
Yeah, it worked out really well. I mean, the opening line of the book, and it's the line on the back of the book here, is some people in life know exactly what they want to achieve. This is a book for the rest of us. And I find that more people are in that, of course, now more than ever, like you said. There's this general feeling of reevaluating our lives. People who are pretty happy in their careers are still now going, well, is this really the best use of my time and talents? And people who've been shaken from their lives due to health or career, as I said, they've changed jobs, or their jobs have been lost, or they're facing a financial pinch right now. They're reevaluating their personal relationships, their location of living. All of that has given a great rise to this book, and it seems to be resonating with all types of people. It is the student who's coming out of college. It's the person who's leading a team through new territory. It's anyone who's in that phase of evaluating and looking for the right next move.
Yeah, I think it gives you confidence that it's okay if you don't know what that next move is. Like, it is okay to not be certain and to spend some time in that moment, and that clarity will come. So really, it is an amazing book for the moment. I love that you called what's normally the table of contents the circle of contents. What was the idea behind that?
Well, a few things. Number one, and I'll show it to people who have not seen the book. This is what it looks like. It is a circle of contents. Because I think risking forward is a cycle we go through again and again, sometimes in the span of minutes. Like, you're trying to figure out whether you should speak up in a moment. That's a risk forward. Like, should I say this or not? I see this with my clients in board meetings. I see it with people among family members. I see it with entrepreneurs and artists. Like, should I share this idea? That's the risk forward. But it could be over the matter of hours as you're struggling with a project, or it could be weeks or months or years. And so we go through the risk forward cycle again and again. And this book is written in 7 phases. And the first is to embrace the fog. That's the first phase of the 7 phases. And the next is to begin from within, to, like, first, instead of looking at what everyone else is doing, say, like, what's the right next move for me or my company or my team or my family? So it is.
So do you think you can read it? Like, do you have to read it from beginning to end, or do you think people could sort of come in and out of it and read different bits at different times?
Absolutely both. And I love that you asked that, because I'm the kind of person who doesn't read in order, like the instructions come and I just start. Some people really like to go in a linear fashion. So I wrote it for both types of brains: people who like to skip around and just pick up a little chapter and just read that, or people who want to follow the order.
Got it. Well, I think everyone probably can already guess that there are tons and tons of kind of nugget-sized pieces of wisdom in the book. Victoria, can you share like a few of the key messages? For example, something from the 4 questions.
Sure. So early on in the book, there's a section I call the 4 questions, and it's questions I've asked all kinds of people around the world to help them figure out that next step. And one of them, which is, I'll give you 2 actually. One of them is, what interests you now? And that seems incredibly simplistic, but the challenge is sometimes our pasts can hold us back, not just our failures, but our successes too. Because we think, well, I'm known for this. It could be what you cook for dinner. Everyone knows me for that dish. Or it could be everyone knows me for this type of career or this type of expertise. And we feel that we feel beholden to that past, and we need to continue in that path forward instead of saying, what interests me now? What's next? And I learned that years ago. I took a workshop with this guy, Remy Charlotte, in the early 90s. He was teaching out in Colorado at this very groovy place called the Naropa Institute. And I'd seen a picture of him in a magazine from Naropa, and he was doing this kind of move on stage. He was opening his mouth and gesturing, going, and I said, I don't know what he's doing, but whatever that is, that's what I want to do. He was talking and moving. And I thought, it's not dance, it's not theater, it's somewhere in between. And I showed it to my sister, Lisa, and she said, that's Remy Charlotte, who wrote Arm in Arm. Like, that's the guy. And I went, holy cow. I went out, I studied with him. First day of the workshop, we've all been to workshops where you have to sort of talk about your past, and everyone has to give their elevator speech and sort of prove how smart and important they are. And we all sat around checking each other out, like, who's weird? Who am I going to bond with? And he said, all right, we're going to introduce ourselves, but I don't want to hear what you've done before or what you're known for. We're just going to have a moment to say what interests us now. And it was so freeing. Like, one by one, we ran around the room, and it didn't matter who someone was, their credentials, their doctorate, their books that they'd written, their money they'd made. It was just going forward from here. And so that was a profound question. And it's something I've asked people, and big companies sometimes feel they have to keep doing what they've done. So that's that question. The second one is the fourth of the four questions. The second one I'll share is the fourth of the four, and that is, what don't you want? What don't you want? And as some of you know, my father, George Labalme, loved this statement that came from my grandfather, which was, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. And it's that feeling of, all right, I've been there before. I don't want that. I don't want that kind of client. I don't want that kind of interaction. I don't want that kind of relationship. I don't want that kind of couch. It's just, what don't I want in my life anymore, or in my business? And that's a profoundly clearing and clarifying question for any one of you who is someone that you care about, who's feeling confused or not sure what's next. Sometimes people can't say what it is that they want, but oftentimes they know what it's not. And if you just say, well, let's start with what you don't want, that is such an empowering thing for people to articulate and stand behind and speak forward to. So there's two questions.
I can't wait to use that with my teenager about college choices, because it's very, very hard conversation to have. If I said, what don't you want, rather than what you want, I think it'd be a lot easier.
Absolutely. It's great for kids.
Yeah. And I also love what you say about what interests you now, because stuff can stick to you. Like when I said, as a kid, I said I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then, like, my parents were always telling everybody, like, Jillian wants to be a marine biologist. And I was like, no, I want to be a DJ, which obviously that didn't happen either. But this idea of, like, you don't have to, just because you love something, 10 years ago, that doesn't mean you have to do this for the rest of your life. It's
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a section in the book later on called the Just Because chapter. And there's 6 just because questions there, or statements. And one of them, which speaks to this point, is, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it. And that is an incredibly freeing concept, because we are told by people around us, like, oh, you're good at that, you should. And then everyone starts to, as they say, should all over you. And you get the should, like, you should do this, you should do that. And it can really confuse your vision.
Right. That's really interesting. And how about, can you talk about this piece around indecision, or the 5 minutes? Yeah, both of those I'd like to hear more about.
Sure. There's a section in the book titled Indecision. Some of you know this was something that I struggled with for many, many years, and I was made fun of. People used to call me Victoria, I don't know, Labalme. They thought it was funny. It was actually very hurtful. But I think indecision has great wisdom in it. And so this is back to the opening statement I made, that there are a lot of people out there who will tell you that decisiveness is a positive trait and indecision is a sign of weakness. And we are taught that in our culture. Sure. And right. And it's throughout the business world. And that's the world I've spent a lot of time in. However, how great is decisiveness if you make a poor decision? And so a lot of what I started to witness at these large companies and is leaders afraid to show indecision. And so they would make a choice to look strong, and in so doing, lead their team down a path that was incredibly costly in terms of resources and money, time, energy, distraction in the market, confusion. about marketplace and value and their positioning. And, depending on the size of this decision, I mean, it could be millions and millions of dollars. And we do that in our personal lives too. And in our smaller worlds, it's like, oh, we'll do this, or I'll plan to go in that direction. And that could be a week off or a month off your path. So I made the case in the book for the value of indecision, not to say that you should wallow in it, but to say there's a reason that you're indecisive, or the people that you love are indecisive. So for those of you who have people around you who are, quote, always indecisive, what we need to do is look beneath the surface. And so what I drew in the book is this picture of an iceberg. So this is the chapter on indecision. Each chapter has a full bleed color page. And so this is what it looks like here. You can see the iceberg of indecision. And what we see often is what's above. We see the person above the water going, gosh, I don't know. And what we really need to do as a parent, as a friend, as a mentor, as a colleague, is to see what's below and understand that. And so that's what this book offers. And we have a whole bunch of reasons why we each might be indecisive, but the second page of that chapter shows you a whole variety of questions. You're laughing there, but shows you a whole variety of questions to ask.
Yeah.
Tell me what made you laugh.
Just because you can be indecisive just because. I mean, I think it's a powerful point you make, because as I'm the business I'm in, it's all about being decisive. You got to go for that book. You got to choose the right books, and you get in a book proposal or a manuscript, and you got to, decide overnight. And sometimes, when you're forced to make I mean, you're talking more about sort of big life decisions, but even these business decisions and this idea that I will say, being remote, I feel like there's even less room for like the discussion, but wait, or
right,
how do we really feel? Like everything just moves forward really, really quickly. So this notion of pausing, and if not wallowing in decision, at least understanding that there might be good reasons for it, is, I think, a really, really, really good point.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it is sometimes these smaller decisions which then have a domino effect, and they lead to other decisions. So, this is my call to all of us to say, when someone is in that place of indecision, instead of giving them a hard time for it, say, well, let's talk about that. What's really going on? Or what might you really be thinking? Or what are you afraid to say? Or, sometimes you need more information. Sometimes you need less information, less voices in your head. Sometimes you have an alternative option, but you're afraid to say it. So there are all kinds of reasons. And I think to understand that is empowering for all.
That's great. And how about the 5 myths?
Well, yeah. So there's another section called the 5 myths. And they are, I'll give you one, which is the myth of goals. This goes again back to my whole thesis, which is there's this philosophy that goal setting is taken as an unquestionably valid activity. And while goal setting has great merit, oftentimes there's something called goal contagion, where it's like we adopt other people's goals as our own. And this, we all know this, it happens in certain societies, and in your cul-de-sac, in your community, in your school, in your whatever, your society, your business. People start to dress the same. They start to want the same things. And I think it's just so important to go back and say, what's right for you, or what's right for your family, or what's right for your business if you run a team or a company or whatever. Because, when I was coaching speakers, which I did a lot of, and I still do, there was a phase where it seemed like everyone who came to me, and this is on the entrepreneur side, not the corporate side, but entrepreneurs, they'd say they want a TED Talk and a New York Times bestseller. And they all thought that was like original. And I said, stand in line with the 200 other people I've spoken to in the last few months. Is it really what you want? And so again, if we're going to find that original path forward, that risk forward, and this is, by the way, the cover is that path forward, that wavy, not necessarily direct path. It may not be that we want what everyone else wants.
Oh my God, you have to keep telling people that, because this is what happens. We get everybody, the next thing I have to do is write a book. But if they're just writing a book because someone else told them they should write a book, or because their friend wrote a book and it did well, the book's not going to be good. Right. Because it doesn't come from the heart. It's not really what they want to do. So yeah, I love that you've been maybe cautioning some of these, TED Talk, then book, then this, then that people. You don't have to. You don't have to do everything the way everyone else does.
Yeah, I mean, back to my personal life when I was growing up, I mean, the assumption was, I finish college, find a nice guy, get married. And as most of you here know, who've known me since I was born, I didn't get married till my 40s, and it was just that assumption. Or when people get engaged, the next question is like, when are you getting married? And they're married, when are you having kids? And we see that a lot. And that sort of societal pressure does damage. And again, just back to my business life, I see it as well there. Like there's that, the make more money, the grow the team, grow the followers. And that is not necessarily the right thing for everyone.
I don't know where you wrote it, but you said that it's not that you didn't get married, it's that you just skipped your first divorce.
Yeah, that was my line. People gave me a hard time, and I finally just turned it around. I said, I skipped my first divorce. And then they would look at me, and they're like, the look in their eye would change. They'd be like, I should have done that.
That's great. Okay, will you tell us the story of the audition for the part on Sex and the City?
Yeah. So, well, that's so funny. No one's ever asked me that in all these interviews. So
I mean, I watched it very, I was a fan of the show. So of course, this was interesting to me, but you have a point that in the book about the part you auditioned for, how well you did in the audition and what happened in between before you actually started filming.
Okay. Well, I'll see if I can tell the story. I mean, I wrote it in the book, so I'll do the truncated version of it, but I had been called in to audition for Sex and the City. And the original part that they called me in for was for a clinician. It was a Weight Watchers clinic, and I was the clinician. And one of the characters in the show, one of the 4 women, was coming in to possibly sign up for Weight Watchers. And when I went to audition, I was planning to wear a white lab coat because as an actor, whether you're doing a commercial or a film part or a TV part, in this case, you're supposed to dress the part. So I thought, I'll, wear like a white coat or white men's shirt to kind of look like a and I talked to a friend and she said, what are you planning to wear for your audition? I said, oh, I'm going to wear, something professional. She said, no, you got to look hot. I said, wait, what? She said, it's called Sex and the City, Victoria. You got to look sexy. And I said, but I'm a clinician. She said, so sure enough, I found what at the time was the sexiest thing I had. Not very sexy. It was a deep V-neck, royal blue cotton t-shirt. So I put on that and I went in and auditioned for the clinician role. And then the casting director, someone I can't said, we should have her audition for Denise. And I thought, no, I had known the director in advance and he'd slipped me a copy of the full script, not just what's called the sides, the pieces that you read for that part, but the whole script. And I'd known that this Denise character was this woman with these, as described, huge breasts that pour out of her skimpy outfit. And I'm thinking, that's not me. Like, I can't. Well, nonetheless, they had me audition. I was so nervous and felt so out of place being this type of sexy restaurant hostess whose breasts pour out of her that I covered up my discomfort with a little bit of sarcasm and sass. And the way I read the line cracked up the casting directors, the producer, the show's director, and I got the part. So a few weeks later, we're getting ready and I find out that the delay of the film is now not just a few weeks, but it's going to be months because Sarah Jessica Parker at the time was pregnant and they had to wait for the right time. So I used that time to go over my whopping 5 lines. And I go over my lines again and again, like, I got this down. I'm going to be the sexy restaurant waitress who saunters in, and I had to loop my arm around the character of Richard and deliver my lines. And so I was practicing the sultry walk and the sexy voice, and I got it, so it's time we go down to Atlantic City. And this, by the way, is not in the book, but I'll tell it for the Cornwall home team.
Oh, goody.
My father used to love this story. So I get to my hotel room and they come in and they bring me down to the costume room where they have all these dresses on these hangers, and they're looking at me without my full bosom. And the casting director goes, let's get us some chicken cutlets. Like, what are chicken cutlets? Chicken cutlets in the world of film costuming. And I see Lori Bevins is here, and Lori would probably know this because she did film and play costumes. There are these rubber inserts that give you a full breast. So they insert these, they look like chicken cutlets into my bra, like a lot of them, and in instant boob. So I go in. So if any of you see me in that little section of Sex and the City, you'll be like, that does not look like Victoria. And that is why. So it's time to film. It's 3 a.m. We are filming my sequence, and I come sauntering into frame, playing my super sexy, sultry women. And the director's like, okay, good, Victoria, just be more you. And I won't go through the whole story, but take after take. And I could not get back to that original sassy sarcasm covering my discomfort, sort of the original Victoria version. I had tried to become what I thought they wanted me to be. And it was in a way a caricature. I thought it was original. I thought I was being who they wanted, the sexy restaurant hostess. And I hadn't trusted that my original impulse had been enough. And I never, ever quite found my way back to my real self, my real voice, if you will. And even now I look at my moment on Sex and the City, the 5 lines, and I just can see like I'm teetering between those 2 impersonations, and neither was really, it wasn't right. So it's a story in the book about really your original impulse is often pretty spot on, number one. Number two, that caricature, that thing of what we think other people want us to be, and that can be in work or in life, can really lead us astray.
It's funny. Margaret mentioned that I had edited Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights. He does a very similar story about Dazed and Confused, and how he got that. He was not an actor before. He got the part by meeting the producer in a bar, and he just like walks on the set the next day and becomes that character. And that's his first acting experience. He does amazing. I mean, if anyone hasn't watched Dazed and Confused, it is a brilliant performance of his. But then when now he decides he wants to be an actor, and his next role, he just over prepared. And he lost that thing that was that sort of, as you say, that sort of like original take that was just him.
Yeah.
And so he has a whole thing in the book about coming back to that. How could you get back? Because you can't under prepare either. So there's something in between there. Very similar idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly it.
So that was a very funny story, but there's a very poignant part of the book when you talk about your mom and her getting sick, and how that, I think, is involved with you writing the book. But can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to actually read that section. Maybe we'll take some questions, and I'll maybe read that as a close.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Nice. There's a lot of people here I think knew my mom.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so wait, do we want to go to questions? Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
First, you had said earlier that people, had been reading the book and, have already sort of talked to you a little bit about how they, how it's affected them. Have you had, tell us something about someone who's read the book and said, this helped me. I've sort of, kind of know what I want to do next, or, just anything about other readers. And I would also, just before she answers that, say that when you go and buy the book and read the book, when you have a response about how it's helped you, please go to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com and leave your review, because it's really, really helpful to spread the word for the book. Other customers really do go and look and, see those 4-star reviews and read what people say. So that's just, a little plug. Please go buy the book at your local bookstore or wherever, and then leave a review. But tell us about it.
Thank you. We want the 5-star reviews.
Five, not 4. First, sorry, 5.
Five. Yeah. So absolutely. It's incredible. Writing this book, I should say, was a real risk forward. And a number of you have heard me talk about this. I'd gotten known for 2 other very specific areas in my life. And one is Rock the Room, which is the presentation performance skills. And one is something called the Through Line, which I talked about, is basically business skills using the performing arts. So how do you use the arts to understand business, how you stage a meeting, how you listen to the subtext, everything from first and final moments, and how you structure a conversation. So that's kind of what I was known for. And then I felt that there was something else that needed to be said. I really felt compelled to write this. And that's what I shared at the beginning. This was the risk forward of writing risk forward. And I worked hard. It took a lot of subsuming my ego, if you will, to take out certain comments and references to make it a book for everyone. And you know, Jillian, that's kind of the kiss of death in the book world. They say if a book's for everyone, it's for no one. But I really tried to speak to different populations and wrote carefully. And to that point, like I'm humbled. It makes me kind of choked up to hear who's been touched by it. Dickie Smothers, who's the Smothers brothers, one of the Smothers, he sent me a text and he said, and he's 81. He said, this is the book I need right now at this phase of my life. As I'm looking, I've done a lot. I'm known for a lot. I'm looking at what I want to do with the last part of my career. Like, this is the book I need. A student who's coming out of college, wrote and just said, I have felt so much pressure because everyone's like, you got to know and you got to pick your path. And she said, it just has given me such permission. That's the word we hear a lot. A colleague of mine who runs a very big company in the health industry and diet nutrition. It's a multi-million dollar company. She got the book and she said, I was in such a fog because there was a lot of pressure to increase the company's revenue and to go in a certain direction. And I was about to hire an outside consultant because she said, that's not my thing. And she said she got to a place in the book which says, don't outsource your vision. Don't outsource your vision. And she said, why I'm about to outsource? This is a company I built. I know it. I know my client base. I know what they need. And she said, I embraced the fog. I went back to myself. I went through the book. I answered the questions. And she said, I think it saved me $5 million, the book. I think it's $5 million because that pivot.
You get a percentage of that?
No, but there's a section in the book. I just have to show it because it's one of my favorite parts. And it's called the V, not after my name, but it's the idea of this is your vision. And all it takes is someone to just tip it a tiny, tiny bit with a little comment. And, it goes from this to this. And that few degrees off, which is what she was about to do, over time is a lot of money. And when you start to steer a company that size off kilter, it can have significant ramifications. So that's another example. I just did an event for a Japanese audience, which was so sweet. The Japanese, they love precision and tiny things, and they loved the book for the layout. But the comments from them about how it's helped them to take risks, whether it's a small risk or a large risk, has been profound. And I'll share one more, which is a colleague of mine who was struggling because I spent a lot of time around online marketers, and there's a lot of pressure again to make more money and to launch the next product. And, people like rinse, repeat, make more money, do it more. And she said, I am exhausted. She said, I just want to risk forward by stopping. I just want to break. She said, I feel like I'm betraying myself by continuing to grow and increase the business. And she said, so my risk forward is to stop. And there's a whole section of the book where I say, sometimes risking forward looks like stepping back. And she did. She regrouped, she recuperated, and she came back bigger and stronger. And her business is even greater than it would have been had she continued and worn herself out. So, people are picking out instruments from their closets that they haven't played in a long time. They're writing books that they wanted to write. They're trying things because part of the message is you don't have to know where it's going. As I say, trust the idea that can lead to the idea. And you don't have to always have a plan and a goal. It can find its way and unfurl and unfold as it grows.
Isn't this so inspirational? I think what you said about it being for everyone, and you are right. We always say we need, in our business, we need a more targeted audience, but I really do see that you could give this to the, high school or college graduate, and you could give it to someone who was planning their retirement or was afraid of planning their retirement. So
right.
that's hard to do, but I can tell that it was very intentional of you to make sure that it wasn't just for the college graduate or just for the person in their midlife crisis. It's really for anyone in a period of transition.
Right.
So you want to read that bit about your mom?
Yeah. If we have questions, we can do a quick Q&A.
Okay.
And then I'll end with that little passage. I should also, before we do that, I just realized one thing I forgot really to mention is the whole concept of risk forward is something that was inspired from studying with Marcel Marceau. And as many of you know, movement's a big part of my expression form. And he used to say risque avant. And it was this type of movement, and I talk about this, where you were weight forward, almost off balance, but heart open. And I started to think that was a philosophy for a living, how we can be a little forward, heart open, even if we're off balance.
I love that. That's great. I don't know. I might be, someone come help me if I'm not seeing, if there are questions that I'm not seeing, but I don't see any questions. Come
All
on,
right.
people. I know somebody has a question. There is one. Okay. What do you say to college graduates who are stuck and afraid to take any step forward?
I say, get the book. Yeah, I think it's really, I would say to them, recognize places where they have succeeded in the past and been a little scared. Like if you can build current success on past success, it gives people confidence. So confidence comes from competence. And if they can recognize they've been competent in the past and made a courageous decision, they'll be like, I can do that. Like there are certain factors in the current situation that mirror where I've been before. And then I know I can make it forward. So part of it's that, recognizing a past success. A part of it's the culture in which the question's asked. So sometimes if they're not feeling safe, they won't speak up, or if they're not feeling safe around their peers, they won't try it. So it's a matter of recreating a cultural environment where people can try something, even if it's small. And I call that in the book a micro risk. So there's this whole philosophy, which I'm particularly not a fan of, which is go big or go home. Right. And people are like, well, I don't think I can go big and I can't guarantee it's going to be a success. So I guess I'll just go home. Right. And I think that's really detrimental to the idea of innovation and risking forward. So this is back to trust the idea that can lead to the idea, to give them the permission to try it, even if it's not going to necessarily be what ultimately they do. Like a micro risk in that direction can be great, whether that's get the book, take a course, watch some YouTube videos, talk to someone who's in that industry, find out what it's really like. Those kind of private micro risks give people that sense of safety.
So you're kind of redefining risk a little bit in this book, right? Or at least redefining like how we, culturally right now, I think risk is really associated with what you were saying, like the big risk, like take more big risks. And the notion is to think about a risk in a different kind of way, and in a less kind of threatening and massive way.
Yeah. A story comes to mind that I think will be valuable. It's not the student situation, but years ago, I was flown down to CNN headquarters. I was working with a company. I was helping with them with their presentation skills. We had a big pitch to the Houston Airport Association. Long story, but the point is there were 20 of us at this very, very long conference table down at CNN, and there were 5 different companies represented because we were all coming together as part of this pitch. And this outside consultant who was leading the group said, all right, we're 5 companies here, and these are big companies. We need to come up with a team name as we make this pitch to the Houston Airport Association. And so he looks at this table of 20 top executives and he goes, what should our team name be? Anyone have any ideas? And he's got this big flip chart, and the room goes cold. And I'm at the end of the table and I know exactly what's going on, which is people are afraid to risk forward. The risk is too great. In an environment of 20 top executives around a table at CNN, no one wants to open their mouth. And there's this chilly, awkward silence. And I'm thinking, well, he's the consultant. I better not say anything. But it's so uncomfortable. I finally say, I have a suggestion. Could I make a suggestion? Try not to up him. You know, women, how that is, right? So he's like, yeah, sure, Victoria. I said, why don't we divide into teams of 4? We'll have 5 teams of 4. And we'll each as a team come up with a name that we think might be good for the whole group. And he goes, great. So everyone bunches, like this group at the table, this group, and all of a sudden the volume and the interaction increases significantly because we're safe. So everyone's like, I don't know, what do you think? What do you think? Not only are we safe, it's a smaller group. So we've de-risked it, as they say in business. Number 2, you're not responsible. If your idea isn't good, it's the team's idea. So we've defrayed the cost of the risk. So all of a sudden, everyone's like, I don't know, what do you think? What do you think? And then by team, we each said, here's our team's idea for a group name. And the innovation that was born out of that environment was extraordinary. We came up with all these names, we voted on them, we picked one. The point is, if someone's not risking forward, it's because they don't feel safe or they don't have the confidence. It's usually one of the two.
Interesting.
So if you can create safety or give them confidence, it'll help a lot.
That is good advice for managers as well as other people in the world. I have a question from Dale, or a comment, more of a comment. There's a resonance in your work with Otto Scharmer's Theory U, also taught at Naropa University. Do you know about that?
I don't, but I'm going to look it up. So thank you, Dale.
Okay. I think that is it for the questions. So maybe we could go to that bit about your mom from the book.
Sure. Yeah. So this is towards the end of the book.
Or the beginning, if you start wherever you want to, because of the circular chapter.
I love that. Exactly. Yeah. And the book follows a bit of a rainbow progression. So it starts in the blues and it goes through purple, crimson, red, orange, yellow, green. So this is in the green section towards the end or the beginning, as Jillian has so aptly corrected me. And it's called Your Life's Work. So before I read this, I just want to say thank you to you, Margaret, again. Thank you to Shari. Thank you to you, Jillian. Thank you to all of you who have been here. It's very sweet. It's very touching. And I'm very grateful. So I hope you'll get the book. I hope you'll get the hardcover, by the way, because it's not quite the same in digital. And here is this final story called Your Life's Work. The day after my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, we gathered at our family's home in Connecticut. As the evening arrived and the light began to dim, my mother went outside and walked to the edge of our property, gathering evergreen branches, twigs, and flowers from her garden. Back in the house, she laid everything out on the hearth and stood before an open vase on the mantle. Piece by piece, she began to create a bouquet. She did this every Friday evening and always referred to it as her life's work. I flopped down on the oversized living room chair, my legs dangling over the edge, and I watched her moving as if she were conducting a silent orchestra, sliding stems into the vase, then gently lifting them back up into position. Recognizing that she would be gone in a matter of months, I realized I never quite understood why she called this her life's work. And so I asked, branch in one hand, cutters in the other. She turned towards me. When I was appointed to be on the board of a corporation, I was the only woman who held a seat, she said. The men on the board asked me to give a speech to the company. How did I get to where I am in my life? A PhD, a published author, associate director of an institute, 4 children. Because I never had a 5-year plan, I always just did what was next as best I could. And then the metaphor I came up with was this, and this is the story I told the corporation. Every Friday, as my family gathers in the evening at our home, in the dying light of the day, I go around the house and I find what I can: a pine bough, a twig, some flowers. And with that, I make a bouquet. I do my best with what I've got. This is my life's work. She pivoted back and continued conducting. A branch arched off to the left, a stalk of purple flowers jutted to the right. I like how it's not symmetrical, I murmured. Yes, she nodded. Things should be not perfect.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I got teary when I read it in the book, and when you doing it again, it's an amazing piece. And I wish I'd known your mom, and I'm sure there are people here in the audience that did, and that was just really special. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you all. I'll turn it back to you. I'm so grateful to you each for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you, Margaret.
Skillful interview. And Victoria, that was wonderful. It was warm and it was brilliant. And I think we all learned a lot and enjoyed it. And thank you all for participating in this library program. Our next few programs will be live, so I'm looking forward to seeing people in person. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, and enjoy your evening.